We've been discussing these nama-rupa sankharas. They are conditioned things. They arise according to cause and condition, such as nama causing rupa, then nama causing nama, rupa causing nama, and rupa causing rupa. So in this way, we discuss with the headings in this way, and yesterday we were discussing how nama causes nama, and because the time was up, we stopped discussing. So today we shall continue this subject from the yogi's practical experience. While the yogis are practicing and cultivating concentration, in this case Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, deepening this, they may see some visions, signs, nimittas, objects of, say, the Buddha object of the Buddha, object of the Deva, trees, persons, and so on. These objects may come in their visions one by one, and before one object is noted or ended noting, another object will arise. So in this way, the attention is drawn towards ever new objects, ever new visions, because while one is noting an object, a new object arises at the same time, and the mind is drawn towards that object. That's why one has to note ever new objects as they arise. While noting this, another one may arise, yet another one, and so on, before one has noted that object, particular object. So this is how nama causes nama. In the body are sensations such as itchy feeling. While one is noting one itch, another itch may arise in another place before that particular itch has been noted, or while one is still noting it, another itch will become obvious, and one's mind is drawn towards that new itch. So before one disappears, another one arises, and the mind is set to be jumping from one place to another, being drawn by this mental advertence or attention. So in this case, this is also the case of example of how nama causes nama. And when yogis are practicing, they are bound to see such visions very obviously. This is just in brief. And also when they are hearing a voice or sound, before one has noted this sound, another sound may arise, and the mind is drawn, or attention is drawn towards the new object, and yet a new one, and so on. In this way, one will be noting ever new objects while noting a particular sound. In this way, because the mind is drawn towards that, attention is drawn towards that, one becomes aware of an ever new object, in this case a sound, arising. So before the old one has been noted, a new one arises, and this phenomena becomes very obvious when it comes to this mental meditation of mental objects. So if one has to discuss this subject in detail, it will take about 1 hour. So we just discuss only in brief. The reason why the solution or the answers were not given in advance by the meditation teachers is that not to allow the yogis to speak or to possess impure knowledge, or not to show in advance, so that if they know in advance, their answers will not be pure, their knowledge will not be pure, it will be impure. That's why only the formulas are given, the methods are given, and not the answers to that method. So if you just practice by sinking into the moment and deeply connecting with the object, whatever arises presently, then you are bound to deepen stilling your mind, deepen your concentration, and cultivate knowledge. That will be your own knowledge, empirical knowledge, without conceptualization. That will be a very clean way, pure way of reporting. Therefore, the yogis are exhorted only to note whatever arises without missing them, to activate mindfulness with activated mindfulness. And just like in the arithmetical sum, when in school you are given this arithmetical problem, the formula, the working method only is given, not the answer to that working method. Maybe the teacher may calculate one sum and from beginning to the end, but as for the other sums or problems, the students have to work by themselves so that they can sharpen the knowledge, and the knowledge that that the answer that they gain or give will be their own answer. As to how rupa causes nama, this thought process which arises in our stream of consciousness, such as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on, arise due to some objects, some cognitive elements. Otherwise, it won't arise without any object. It has to rely or depend on an object. Unless there is an object, this consciousness will not arise. Because the characteristic of the mind is to cognize an object, to know an object. If there is no object, there will be no mind, no consciousness. Let us say we hear something, for instance what Sayadaw is teaching, sound waves strike your eardrums, causing hearing consciousness. Now these sound waves are known as striker element. The ear is the base element, and the hearing consciousness, the resulting hearing consciousness, the contact and the feeling is, or they are, the ignition element. Now, when the voice is good, you have good feeling. When the voice is not desirable, then you have unpleasant feeling. Therefore, this mentality, group of mentality, which is the ignition element, consists of hearing consciousness, the contact of the three, and then the resultant feeling, good or bad or neutral. So there are only three elements which are obvious, namely the striker element, which is a sound wave, a base element, which is the ear or ear sensitive part of the ear, and the ignition element, made up of hearing consciousness, contact, and feeling. So this is the effect. The mentality is the effect in this case. Now, because of the sound, because of the presence of the sound, because of the presence of the ear, the two of which are materialities, the sound wave and the ear or ear sensitivity are materialities. Because of their presence, if there is no sound, you will not hear. If there is no, if your ear is not in good condition, then also you will not hear the sound. So because of these two things, which are materialities, namely the sound and the ear or ear sensitivity, there arises this hearing consciousness, which is the mentality or nama. Therefore, this is the case of how rupa causes nama. Same thing is true with other consciousness, such as seeing. There are these striker element, base element, and ignition element. Striker element in the form of a visible object, base element in the form of the eye or eye sensitivity, and the ignition element in the form of seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling good or bad. And while you smell something, there are these three elements as well. And while you're tasting, you're taking food, you can taste, and there are also these three elements. These three elements will be obvious when the food comes into contact with the sensitive part of the tongue. Then you will feel the taste of the food. As the food, which is a materiality, comes into contact with the sensitive part of the tongue, which is also a materiality, there will arise this tasting consciousness, contact, and feeling good or bad, whether it's tasty or not tasty. And also in the touching, tangibility on the body, there are also these three elements. When you come into contact, when your body sensitive part of the body comes into contact with the hard substance or soft substance or hot substance or cool substance, you are bound to feel cool, hot or hard or soft, as the case may be, which are the ignition elements. You know them, you know it as soft or hard or hot or cool, and there's the contact, and then there's a feeling whether it's good or bad or neutral. In this way, there are bound to be these three elements: striker element, base element, ignition element. Every time you see, hear, taste, touch, and so on. Every time the objects impinge your sensitive part, sixth sense doors, then this consciousness is bound to arise. Now, what are the things which cause this consciousness? The three elements, namely the striker element and the base element, which are the materialities, rupa, and the ignition element, which is a mentality, nama. So to realize them, you are exhorted, instructed to note every arising with precision, so that you are bound to, as you are able to concentrate your mind, you are bound to see any one of these three elements. Sometimes the striker element, sometimes the base, and sometimes the ignition element. So whatever element you observe, you are bound to observe at the same time other elements. Once you observe one element, you will observe other elements automatically. At the moment of hearing, there are these sound, the striker element, which is the materiality and also one of the causes, and then this which strikes the base element, namely the ear or ear sensitivity or ear drum, which is another materiality, rupa, also a cause, and the effect in terms of the ignition element as a result, which is a mentality. So because of the rupa, which is a cause, there arises this nama, which is effect in this case. So there are only these two, the cause and the effect, and nothing else, nothing extra. Only the cause-effect process at the moment of hearing. So the hearing takes place because of the presence of sound and the ear. If there is no ear, or if the ear is not in good condition, then one will not hear. There will not arise any hearing consciousness. There will not arise any ignition element. And if there is no sound also, there will not arise any hearing consciousness. There will be no ignition element, no mentality. Therefore, because of the combination of these two, the striker element and the base element, the striker element striking the base, there arises, this leads to ignition element. Ignition element is the result of the combination of these two things. So this is the process of cause and effect, as one pays attention, comes to understand the materiality as a cause and the mentality as the effect. So at this moment, there are only these two things, cause and effect, and nothing else, nothing extra. Now, as to the ignition element, which is the mentality, that also is the result of the materiality, namely the ear and the sound. Because of the ear and the sound, there arises the hearing consciousness only, and no other consciousness. there will not arise any seeing consciousness or tasting consciousness. There will arise only hearing consciousness and nothing else. So this way, this hearing consciousness is only notice and nothing else. So one understands that the sound and the ear are the causes for hearing consciousness. This is the knowledge of the relevancy of the cause effect linkage. So it becomes known at the moment of paying attention that at the moment of hearing there is no such thing. This hearing consciousness is not at the command of the Supreme Being, Paramatma, Supreme Self or Soul, such as Brahma, King of Deva, and any omnipotent, autonomous force. So they are not actually, they are non-existent in the beginning. People only take it as being, as existing, what is not actually existing. So this is a distorted view. So at the moment of this hearing, when one pays attention, one comes to see the relevant cause, giving rise to relevant effect, and there is no irrelevancy. Hence one overcomes this distorted view known as Visama Hetuka Deity, fictitious cause view. Now again, because of the past karma, performance of karma, good or bad, your hearing will be pleasant or unpleasant, and that is the past cause. But present or cause also is very important in that because of the ear and the sound, there arises this hearing consciousness. This is present. These are the present causes, not just the past karma. So because of this present existence of the sound and the ear, there arises this hearing consciousness. And also there is this mental advertence. You pay attention. If you don't pay attention, even if there is a sound, and your ear is in good condition, you will not hear it. So because of the combination of these causes that lead to this hearing consciousness, it is not just the past karma. So in this way one comes to understand this cause effect. Knowing the cause and the effect, one overcomes this ahetuka deity, view of causelessness, and seeing the relevancy, understanding the relevancy of causes, that relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect. Then you overcome this Visama Hetuka deity, that is fictitious cause view. And this result is due to the combination of these causes. Only when the causes are harmonious, united, there is this effect. So in this way you overcome this view of karma, just mere karma as the cause, namely the Pupikata Hetuka deity. So in this way, in the course of the practice, you can overcome these wrong views, deities, because if you are not aware of the truth, you are deluded, confused, bewildered, and this will lead to doubt and wrong view. Now, because of the correct awareness, because of your clear-cut view, clear-cut awareness, there is no more doubt. The doubts are cleared, and also the view also becomes clear. This is just a cause and effect, or causal process, causal mode, as can be experienced by the yogis in the course of the practice. If this cause effect, the subject of conditionality, has to be explained from the Patthana point of view, that is conditioned relations, doctrine of conditioned relations, then if we have to reveal like this, then it will become more theoretical, textual, and become more complicated. Therefore we leave it out for the time being. Now as to this straka element, the sound, which strikes the base element, the ear, or ear sensitivity, and then there's a mental advertence, we are paying attention, there's bound to be this hearing consciousness. So there's no such thing as an omnipotent force which can prevent one from hearing if these conditions are fulfilled, namely the sound and the ear. These no amount of 100 omnipotent forces, or 1,000, or 10,000, or 1,000,000 omnipotent forces have the ability to prevent one from hearing, provided so long as the conditions are fulfilled, namely there are the sound and the ear. And also this ignition element, the hearing consciousness, also arises when the causes are fulfilled. When these causes are fulfilled, there will be hearing consciousness. If the causes are not fulfilled, then there will be no hearing consciousness. So no amount of omnipotent force, not even 100 or 1,000 or so on, can cause one to hear if there are no, if the conditions are not fulfilled, namely the absence, if the causative elements such as the sound and the ear are absent, or not in proper condition. So we understand that linkage of the relevant cause and the relevant effect. And there is no omnipotent force which can prevent or cause purposely. They are non-existent. So because we are not able to observe them, we are confused, we have doubt, we have become doubtful, and this leads to wrong views. During the hearing consciousness, when one is mindful, one is bound to see these three elements. They happen at once, but when you're noting, you don't have to differentiate between this is striker element, this is base element, or this is ignition element. You don't need to do that. You just note as hearing in a combined way. So this is how one notes. And as one activates mindfulness and deepening concentration, at sometimes one may notice the striker element, that is the sound hitting the ear. At other times, the sound itself, the base element, and at other times the ignition element, the hearing consciousness. So to know the realities, then one is instructed to note, sink into the moment, and deeply connect with whatever is present, in this case the hearing consciousness, as hearing, so that sati gains the priority. In accordance with the saying, guarding the mind, to guard the mind all the time with mindfulness. One has got to be mindful in order to protect one's mind. One has got to note as soon as the object arises. So if one is not mindful, then one misses this object, because mindfulness acts as a protecting agent. Then your mind gets out of control. Then if the sound is pleasant, and desirable. You may like this, and there may be this attachment to the sound. You would like to hear more and more. If the sound is not pleasant, then aversion may arise. So in order to prevent that, to prevent likes and dislikes, you're instructed to note with activated mindfulness as soon as the hearing takes place. So if not, then if you are not able to note as soon as it arises, then you miss the mindfulness, and there will be this. And even if the object is neutral, the sound is neutral, if you are not being able to know this and understand this nature, then there's another unskillful, unwholesome root, namely moha, delusion, can arise. So with aversion, there will be these impurities together with associated with aversion, and if there is attachment, there will be this impurities associated with attachment, and if the delusion or confusion arises, and there will be this unskillful mental states, impurities, which can arise together with this delusion. Let us say when some yogi is sitting and another yogi stands up and makes some noises for some reason or other, intentionally or unintentionally, then if that yogi who is sitting with good concentration hears this, if he loses her mindfulness, he or she loses the mindfulness, then there may arise this aversion in respect of the sound. So it affects that person who is not mindful. As for the other person who makes noise, it may not be intentional. But as for the one who does not note at the moment of hearing and overcome by aversion, dislike, then he or she will be the loser, because aversion, this unskillful root, has arisen in his or her mind. So missing mindfulness is his or her responsibility, because he or she has not noted, has not done what he or she should do. So because there's no means of protecting the mind, that is the mindfulness. So you have to, instead of blaming others, one has got to blame oneself for not having enough stamina, spiritual stamina, mental stamina, to withstand or repel these undesirable things. So the lesson is to note as soon as one hears, and this is the responsibility of the yogi at the moment of hearing. So if one is not mindful in this way, then one will be overcome by likes and dislikes. There will be elation and dejection about agreeable, disagreeable objects, and one will be the loser. Now if one is able to activate mindfulness, to note as soon as one hears, then one will gain, not lose. So instead of causing this aversion to arise and causing these impurities to arise, one should activate mindfulness so as to purify one's mind, and one should cherish this kind of practice. Because of a lack of mindfulness, its unwholesome roots, lova dosa, enters one stream of consciousness, resulting in the impurity of the mind, lack of clarity, lack of stillness of the mind, in this case kanika samadhi, momentary concentration. So because one is not noting at the moment of hearing, one is not aware of this cause-effect process, one becomes deluded, confused. And if one is able to note as soon as it arises, then these things will not enter one stream of consciousness, resulting in the purity of the mind and the stillness of the mind. So then one will come to see the realities of cause and effect. Therefore, even if one is mindful in this way, even if one has not gained insight knowledge, one will be able to prevent these unskillful mental states or negative emotions to arise, likes and dislikes, and that is in itself will be very significant, because your mind is protecting to purify so that it becomes pure and developed and enhanced. In this way you have to accumulate such pure state of mind. In this way you can overcome likes and dislikes, agreeable and disagreeable objects, likes and dislikes about agreeable and disagreeable objects. And if you are able to gain knowledge, even if you encounter these worldly conditions, the contradictions of life, your mind will not ferment, because you'll be able to repel or withstand. And if you are able to have this with the strength of the mindfulness and concentration, you'll be able to repel these objects, undesirable objects, or even desirable objects, as soon as you hear. And if only you can gain insight, then even if you encounter these worldly conditions, you'll be able to withstand, and you'll be poised, and nothing will happen to you, and you will just be able to note and know the nature of the object. There's a Vipassana maxim that if you are mindful, you are free of kilesas. If you are not mindful, kilesas are bound to enter. So this is the maxim. Maybe you can put it in a very poetic way. So mindfulness means the mindfulness of every arising, seeing, every seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, not to miss the object. If you do so, then you'll be free of kilesas, to be purified of kilesas. Kilesas will not enter your stream of consciousness. So you note so as not to allow kilesas to enter your stream of consciousness, so that the mindfulness gains the priority, takes the priority. If you note as soon as you hear, see, touch, taste, touch, and so on. However, for some yogis, they cannot withstand the supervision by some teachers or some sincere friends who want to rectify, who want to fill up the gaps and help them in a very sincere way whenever they see some flaws, some defects. And that in itself can cause aversion in him or her, and that is why it is said that if you are not mindful, because you are not mindful, you don't note at once, kilesas enter, aversion arises in this case. Because the people who come and help you, supervise you, are doing in a constructive way, and not seeing this constructive way, one may have some aversion, and this is allowing kilesas to enter the stream of consciousness. And if one is not, if the object is agreeable, there will be this negative emotion in terms of attachment. If it's disagreeable, then aversion, another negative emotion. And also, if one cannot note an object clearly and see clearly, then at least one will be deluded, confused, because not knowing the realities. So, for the yogi's responsibility is to note so that the mindfulness gains a priority and not kilesas. But some people cannot withstand this supervision, even by the meditation teachers. So that some even say that frankly, of course they are very frank. They say that they have been guarded like prison guards, like prisoners. But this is very frank discussion, frank way of revealing. This is good. But this is a result of a lack of mindfulness. Because of this lack of mindfulness, the aversion arises. That means the mind is not fully developed as yet, so that it lacks repelling power. And because impurities enter, the mind is not developed, so that when one encounters good and bad situation, one will lack also this power of with standing. Some 30 years ago, one Western yogi came to the center, Mahasi Meditation Center, and he was a high-ranking person, but when it comes to this Satipatthana practice, he was only in the primary class. So the teacher gave this, instructions, practical instructions, how to practice in detail, like when one is stretching the one hand, how to first note the intention and slowly note the stretching, slowly like moving like a patient, like a sick person. So he thought it was a trifle, and he said it was already obvious. So he told the translator that he was being treated like a child, and he said he understood all these things. So in this way he told the translator. When the translator replied that he was just giving instruction for him to understand. But Dhamma is not like taking lessons in school. It is actually, it has to be shown in a practical way by the teacher, meditation teacher. However old one may be, however high-ranking one may be, one needs to be taught, like when one is to play tennis, he or she has to be taught how to handle the racket and how to hit back the ball and things like that. So all these things have to be taught in a short time. So Dhamma is also like that. Because he was just shown in a very constructive way, with sincerity, with the spirit of help. So he was not being insulted, and that he calmed down. And some yogis also are like that. They think these things are trifles, and they already know, because they are proud. With pride, they may say that, oh, I know this already. So they don't take notice of these small details, minute details. And some yogis can even be seen not being careful about the details. So in the practice, one should move slowly like a sick person. Then only kilesas will not enter, and one will gain pure insight. One cannot be slack in the practice. Only when one is respectful to the Dhamma, Dhamma will respect you. Not to respect the teachers, it is to respect the Dhamma. Then the Dhamma will help you, so as not to allow kilesas to enter your mind and to be able to gain insight. So this is how the teachers help with sincere, in a constructive way. If you are able to energize the mind like this, you can overcome these impurities and be able to withstand any good or bad conditions. So if one strives in this way with good understanding, by respecting the teachers, they will later even become thankful to the Dhamma and the teachers. But of course the teachers are not expecting any thanks, any gratitude from the yogis, but so long as they can practice, they are just giving help in the spirit of cooperation. So we have to strive in order to be able to cultivate knowledge with the maturity of the practice. Now as to how rupa causes rupa, this is quite obvious. For instance, because of the weather conditions, heat or hot or cold, there is this change in the body, whether the body comes hot or cold. This is how rupa causes rupa. And also because of the nutritious, the food also is rupa, materiality, and it also affects the body. The body is a rupa. So one has got to be mindful every time there is this heat or cold, and then whatever one eats, so as to be able to understand this cause and effect. And then one's knowledge will become very clear in this way. Once you are able to have this clear awareness about cause and effect, then you will come to understand that there is no such thing as an omnipotent force or omnipotent deva or power which is causing this cause and effect. It is mere a continuous flow of pure mind-body dhammas, the cause and effect process. So in this way, if you are able to practice mindfulness, so that mindfulness gains a priority, noting whatever arises immediately, you'll be able to purify your mind of impurities which can arise if you are not mindful. In this way, you'll be able to realize this second life of sasana.